I think they did a tour that was advertised as like, when it comes to pit beef, we're vegetarians. I think that's what they called the tour. And I remember being like, this band's fucking sick.
Yeah, no, that's totally fine. Awesome. Well, without further ado, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. This is another episode of the Scoped Exposure podcast. I am very, very excited to be welcoming the 1/5 of the Canadian stick to your guns ism. So, Chris, thank you so much for coming on the show, man.
Thanks for asking me to do this.
Absolutely. Just a little bit of context with.
Do you hear kids yelling right now?
It's subtly in the background, nothing overbearing.
I'm sorry if this is screwing up your vibe.
No, you're fine. Chris got to go dad mode.
I don't know if you want to start over then.
No, it's up to you. Like, I'll either fast forward
whatever your vibe is.
Well, considering I put it out an episode yesterday that was like so off the rails, like I love those kind of things that kind of just make showcase the show in just a very authentic way. Like, yeah, literally anything can happen on the Scoped Exposure podcast. So here we are.
Sick.
Well, Chris, I am very, very excited to chat with you. Like Stick to Your Guns for me has like been a band that like got me into hardcore, and I'm going back to when I was in high school, like which was almost like just over 10 years ago now, and just like some of those very crucial releases with Hope Division and Diamond to like really set the stage for a lot of the things that got me into like the more harder stuff over the way. So the fact that we're even spending any amount of time together is, I really, really appreciate it, and I'm very excited to have you on.
Oh, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate you asking me to do this. So
okay, yeah. So before we got cut off there, I just want to give a little bit of context. So friends of the show, Rust, which are in that southern Toronto or Ontario area, had mentioned that that you were kind of involved in some things, and then when I reached out to you, you were like, oh yeah, I listened to bits and pieces of the show, so I was like, I think it's time to line up an episode, and here we are. So Chris, it's serendipitous as well, because as we were kind of lining up this episode, it sounds like there's some new Stick to Your Guns things coming down the pipe, and I'm sure there's like more things that you can talk about versus like maybe a couple things that we can hit on. But before we talk about any music shit, we have to check some bevs. So tell the folks at home what you're going to be drinking for the episode.
I'm drinking a water out of a Pure Noise thermos.
Nice.
That's all I got. Nothing fancy.
Yeah. When we were setting this up, Chris was like, do we need to have a beverage? And I was like, kind of, yes, but it literally could be anything. So, I think that is like, it's just, again, plugging to, the Pure Noise connection as well. Is that just like, is that like a Pure Noise sticker on it, or is it like printed on?
Oh, no, Pure Noise does this cool stuff like around, I don't know if it's always like Christmas time or whatever. They just send, I'm assuming everyone, random stuff.
Okay.
I got a blanket, I got a towel.
Oh, a Pure Noise towel. Interesting.
Yeah. So if you get on Pure Noise, you can look forward to like little like Kiss level trinkets with their logo on it. So that's cool.
I love the connection to Kiss there. Like, what are the most non-conventional like merch things that we can put on our logo on stuff and then just send it to our bands? I love that.
Like, Stick to Your Guns has gotten weird with it. Like when we've done Warped Tour and stuff, I got a pair of like Stick to Your Guns like flip flops in my closet. Like, who wants that? I don't know. I don't know anyone's like, I gotta get some Terror flip flops. Like, nobody wants that stuff.
Yeah, before I showcase my bev, I just want to hit on just like kind of not out of pocket, but just odder merch items, because you're seeing that a little bit now. Like, I think the the wildest thing that I've seen in the last couple of months was Drain had like a little like beach like cooler that you can buy with their logo on it. Like you could just put drinks in it. So I'm kind of curious on like all the years that Stig has been going and you've like gone around the world with the band. Like, has there been any like weird merch items that you see either that Stig has done or like other bands that you've seen?
I mean, I think the weirdest we've done is like flip flops. Probably. Oh, we've done Christmas ornaments.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I think those are cool because I hang them on my tree. I don't know who else gets excited for that kind of shit, but
yeah,
I'm just like, all right, you know.
And were those like just like from like the album artworks, or there were like, you know, all these lyrics on it, like a big old like old T-shirt from the mid 2000s?
The ones that I hang, I think, just have the diamond logo. There might be, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, you know, Christmas is coming around the corner, so if your band is looking to be a little creative, maybe Christmas ornaments are the way to go.
I think once every band started doing those ugly Christmas sweaters.
Oh my God.
Somebody probably was like, let's do ornaments.
Right.
You know, and then it happened.
I think it might be a bit harder as far as like shipping, because that's like a very fragile thing. It's very easy just to package like a T-shirt into a bag and just like throw it into the back of a UPS or FedEx. But you gotta be a little bit more careful with the ornaments.
For sure.
Yeah.
You don't. Those are precious cargo.
Yeah, totally. Well, Chris, I'm going to be drinking one of our beverage sponsors that I was mentioning before we jumped on the call here. So this is a brewery here in Calgary called New Level, but they make these craft sodas as well. It's a little too early in the day to be drinking a beer, so I'm drinking one of their sodas. So this is the flavor is called Pineapple Punch, and it's like just really rich, like pineapple juice, essentially. And I'm very, very into it.
Do you say the word soda or do you say the word pop?
Great question. You know, being a Canadian, it's like that. Like, what happens? I think I've never said soda. I've said pop when I was in like high school and middle school. So I've only started to say soda because it's like, no one's going to say craft pop because that sounds weird.
Yeah, it does sound weird, but I refuse to say soda.
Oh, okay.
Like no matter, like I've been with people who like kind of like flip their like language depending on where they are. I'm like going like, oh well, everyone says soda here, so I'm going to say, can I get a large soda? And I don't even care where I'm at. I'll be in like Florida and just go, I'll have a pop.
Have you gotten some weird like what is that?
I got one kid one time who was serving me at a burrito place. Yeah, I think in like one of the Carolinas a long time ago, where I'm going through, everyone's like going soda, and I was just like, no, I'm saying pop. Just because I was just like, I feel like a poser saying soda for some reason. So I get up to the front and I'm just like, can I have a pop? And the guy straight up stops, looks up from the register and goes, where are you from? And then I was like, I'm like, oh, I'm from Canada. And he's like, me too. And he was like, oh, like a guy from like Toronto or something.
That's very wholesome then. Versus like, where are you from? Get out of here. No pop for you. Sodas only. But it's like the same thing. That's so funny though. Like he was just like, oh, I haven't heard that word uttered in years.
Yeah, dude probably moved south when he was like 7 or something.
Yeah. So shout out to, you know, the pop fans out there. You know, Soda Gang, you can stay in your own lane. Well, Chris, cheers to you, my guy. Really excited to do this podcast with you. Yeah. So, you know, any new guests that I have on the show, I kind of ask them the same intro question, just to get a bit of context on how they just got into heavy music or hardcore. You know, dependent if I'm interviewing someone who's like, you know, it's their first band and they're like 17, 18 years old versus someone who's like a little bit older and has been doing it for much longer. I just love hearing those origin stories. So take us way back in time and tell me the first time you heard like guitar music, heavy music, breakdowns, however you want to spin it.
Oh shit. Okay. Guitar stuff. My dad was like a rock guy, you know? So I got into all like the classic rock stuff when I was a kid. And then I really was into like Michael Jackson, Thriller when it came out.
Okay.
And it had Eddie Van Halen playing guitar solos on it and stuff like that.
Totally.
So from there, that was like, I thought guitars were cool. That led me to like just full on metal. Like once I found Metallica it was probably like 88 maybe, and Justice for All was out. They just put out the one video, and I was like, oh my god, this is insane. And from there it was like thrash metal. That's all I wanted. It was like Anthrax, Slayer, all that kind of shit.
Very interesting.
Yeah, so that's my guitar introduction to guitar.
Got you. Yeah. So, before we transition into like more DIY, like punk and hardcore stuff, I don't think I've ever had someone come on the podcast and say it was through Michael Jackson's Thriller and like the guitar solo there that like really piqued their interest. Because that is like polar opposite like genres coming together and meeting in the middle. So that's very, very interesting to me.
Well, Thriller was big when I was like 5.
Totally.
Probably. I was like little, and I was into like at the time I thought I was into like spooky shit.
Right.
So it was like zombies and everything, and then Beat It. Like everything about it was just like leather jackets and knives, and like I was just like it was like top tier 80s tropes, you know. So I was like,
and then adding a blistering guitar solo in the mix of that doesn't feel out of place.
Yeah. So I just was sucked into all of that.
So
and even I got into like some like 80s hair metal stuff too. Like my dad listened to like Def Leppard and Motley Crue and stuff like that. So that was like basically the gateway to like thrash metal, I guess.
Got you. So it was already in the water essentially when you were growing up. Got you. Okay, cool. So when did the introduction of like playing in bands and just like picking up the guitar and like writing your own music, because I think there's a little bit of a realization where it's like, oh, like being in a band doesn't mean that you have to cover these other bands per se. Like I can actually write my own music and have that same kind of response. Where was the in between for you?
I had a group of like close friends when I was probably like 11 maybe, and like another one was playing guitar, another one was learning how to play bass, and we all loved like all like the big four like thrash bands and stuff like that. And we were like, let's try to write our own songs, but we weren't good, and we didn't understand why it didn't sound like Slayer, but it sounded more like the Misfits. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like it was like that's like our skill level was like just not there, so it sounded like just more punk, I guess. And then from that point, I think around that time, I'm trying to think of when Machine Head came out. Machine Head had come out, and I was obsessed with trying to learn other people's riffs, trying to learn scale, like trying to be a musician, you know?
Totally.
And I read an interview from Rob from Machine Head, and he had said like he had stopped practicing scales and stopped learning other people's songs, and then started practicing just writing his own music. And he was like,
interesting.
Because if you can't write your own song, you're just going to be the guy that's just playing in your bedroom, you know? So then at like 11 or 12, I was like, we have to write our own music. We just have to do this. So then I just started trying to write my own shit.
That's really, really interesting. Cause like I've said multiple times here on the podcast, and anyone who knows like my musical, like, start to where I am now, like I never branded myself as like a lead guitar player. I was just so focused on songwriting and riffs and like, piecing things together. So that's empowering for me to hear. It's like, yeah, it is actually better versus like I think like you've seen those movies or those different things where it's like you discover the one crazy guitar player who, again, like you said, is just like playing and doing ridiculous scales and solos in their bedroom, but there's actually a lot of value as well in being able to craft a good song, find flow, and figure those things out. Like write the first 100 bad songs before you can write the next 100 good songs.
And like a guy who can shred and knows everything technically, and even knows like probably music theory or something like that. If he's never practiced writing a song, no one gives a shit how good your solo is in a shitty song. You know what I mean?
Right. Totally.
No one's gonna care. So unless you could write a good song for whatever genre, like your skill level doesn't matter if you don't have the skill of piecing it together in an interesting way.
Yeah, no, totally. I think that's very, very interesting. And in any band that has like two guitar players, to be able to have like a yin and yang, like a balance between the two, to maybe have someone that's like the main songwriter, but then have someone who's like more focused on the leads and like the making things crazier off of a solid foundation is important.
Well, you could have a guy who's skilled at songwriting who it really isn't the best player, and then have a guy who's technically like proficient, and those two will crush everyone.
Totally.
You know,
I'm having flashbacks because I think when Parkway was doing all their like documentaries, like they had said that one of their guitar players that's in the lineup now, that was kind of the situation. It was like a crazy guitar player that had never played in bands, and they just like acquired him because of his skill level, and then it was like over time he learned how to play with people and write his own songs and things like that. So I wanted to hit on that more for myself, but also for the people who are like, well, I can't write like the fastest thing that like bands like Metallica or Slayer is. Like, you don't have to. Like, you can work on that. Like, I'm 28 at this point, and it's only like now I feel like I have that solid rhythm section like locked in, and now it's like I can actually spend some time and focus a little bit more on like the technical and proficiency and all those things.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, as far as like stick to your guns is concerned, like I said at the top of the episode, a band that was like really formative for me getting into hardcore. I know like the band, it was really cool when you guys started doing your own like the Against Them All podcast, and you guys were like talking about some of the behind the scenes of the band and like some of the woes and the wins and all of those things. And so to hear how the lineup has changed drastically, kind of before things were a little bit more locked in around the Hope Division era. So I want to like save like the official origin if I ever get the chance to have Jesse on the podcast to like talk about that from like day one. But as far as like you coming into the band, being the only Canadian that you are, like tell me how like that even like the paths crossed to make that even a possibility for you.
Stick to Your Guns pops on my radar. I'm touring full time in Walls of Jericho at the time.
Right.
And I think they did a tour that was advertised as like, when it comes to pit beef, we're vegetarians. I think that's what they called the tour. And I remember being like, this band's fucking sick. Like, I just thought that just drew my attention to them. So then I started like paying attention to them. And then we had crossed paths, like played a show, and I met them, and they were just like, youthful. I mean, at the time I was probably your age. Like now I'm 42, but I was probably in my late 20s, and I met them, and they were like young kids. Like Jesse was probably like 19 maybe or something. And they were just youthful, full of energy, and like super positive. And and for me, that's just what I was at that point where I just needed to be around positive people. I'm not saying like the people I was around were not positive, but they were like, I don't know, I was just hanging out with a bunch of jaded old people at that point, you know? And then I just met them. We hit it off. Walls of Jericho then takes Stick to Your Guns on their first European tour. And we make them share a bus with us. It was like a I don't know, a bigger thing that had multiple buses with bands having to share buses. And we chose Stick to Your Guns because how young they were, and that they were like, oh, these guys aren't going to like fuck up the bus and try to like party and bang a bunch of girls. And like, we just wanted everything to be chill. Sorry if this is getting long winded.
No, it's fine. I'm curious if that went according to plan or not.
Well, yeah, it was that worked out great. I became good friends with them, real good friends with Jesse. Him and I had talked about doing a side band. I was writing like some shit that sounded like Boy Sets Fire kind of at the time.
Oh, okay.
Just like, for fun. And I was just like, yeah, you should sing on this thing. And it was just one of those things. Then Candace from Walls of Jericho gets married, and her husband decide they're going to start a family. She gets pregnant. Walls of Jericho can't tour. I hear Stick to Your Guns needs a guitar player. I hit up Jesse. He tells me actually they need someone to help write a record.
Oh.
And then I was just like, oh shit, crazy. And he's like, you should help us. So then I was like, all right. And I flew out there, helped write what became the Hope Division. And then at that point, one of the guitar players was going to leave, and he left. And then they just asked me to be in the band.
So, there's a lot to break down there. But like when
no, that was kind of long.
No, it's all good. So when Jesse was asking like, hey, like come and help us write this record, which, I think, you guys have talked about it, and I totally agree that like that was a huge transitional move as far as sound wise for Stick to Your Guns compared to things off of from what comes from the heart and things like that. at the time, was it in your head where you're like, oh, I'm going to write a kick-ass record and then I'm going to join this band? Or were you just like, I really believe in these kids and I want to be able to help them out, and you didn't really have any expectations to come from that? Like,
well, Jesse and I had talked about it. His brother was playing guitar at the time, and he told me his brother was going to be leaving.
Okay.
But I had friends who had flown out and joined bands from that you think you're friends with someone because you like talk to them briefly, you know, but like, and they had advised me not to like just jump in right away. They were like, you should just go out and try it out and then see how that fits. And then if that works out, then cool. But I've had friends who made mistakes who ended up in bands that they were just like, I fucking hate the singer, or I hate the bass player, or whatever, you know?
Totally.
So I just tried to be like cautious about everything.
Yeah. You was like, you were kind of doing a test run, if anything.
Yeah, and for them too, I even presented it to them like that. Like I was just like, I might get there and you guys might hate me, you know? So totally. It's like, instead of just jumping into this thing and then having to deal with each other, how about we just work on the record and we just see how it goes?
So let's talk about the Hope Division, because I think, again, I've gotten to hear some like behind the scenes through the podcast, but also just like hearing, you know, I would listen to like Enough Is Enough or Colorblind, and then like hearing, you know, What Goes Around or Amber, like the guitar work, clearly there was like a shift, which, you know, now that we're kind of piecing together, was like a lot of your input as well. And so tell me about that, because I think you guys have brought to light some of like the Hope Division as far as release wise maybe didn't go according to plan in some ways. Like set lists got train wreck. So, you know, I highly encourage people to go to the Stick to Your Guns podcast if they want to hear like some of the full details around that. But maybe you can just break it down into a couple minutes about like how you wanted things to go and then how they ended up actually coming out.
Well, we had the label at the time heard a song that should have been a track 7 that we were just like, yeah, this is a cool thing, you know? And they were like, this is the one everyone's got to hear. They wanted it to be the single. They wanted it to be the first track. And then for me, I straight up like, we were going back and forth over stuff and arguing about it. And then I got on a plane to like fly to California. And by the time I landed, 12:30.
It's 12:30.
It's 12:30. Yeah. That's how I know when to go pick up my kid from school.
Okay.
By the time I landed, there were like songs already released. And like
shit.
The track order was different. And then I was like yelling at our not yelling, but like arguing with our manager, like threatening to leak the record myself. Like going, I'm leaking it in the right order. Like, this is bullshit. Who does that? But yeah, so the whole thing was a mess.
Well, yeah, because I think on the podcast you were talking about how the intent with What Goes Around with like the guitar being plugged in was like the new sound of Stig and like all of those things. And then it was like it feels a little weird to have like you said, like a song that probably would fit better later in the record as like a filler thing, because it's got the singing and it's like like it's almost like a safe it's a safe song, but it got moved to the front. So now that, you know, What Goes Around is one of my favorite tracks with how fast some of those riffs are. And so sometimes I feel like I should just make a playlist and ask you, what order should this actually be in?
Well, I mean, the only thing that's really fucked up is What Goes Around is supposed to be first, and the whole thing's supposed to be shifted up. And then Where the Sun Never Sleeps, I think is the first song, is supposed to be like probably like track 7 or 8 or something like that.
Right.
It was deep in the record that it made me go like, why are you picking the deep? This is supposed to be the deep cut that like the guy who really likes the band loves.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Totally. Yeah.
The first song was supposed to be the like, this is the minute and a half. Holy shit, they're playing so fast. This is pissed off.
Totally.
You know, that's how it was supposed to open with aggression, and instead it opened with like a kind of Rise Against type like rock.
Right. Yeah, and I love that Stig has been able to play in like, you know, dip their toes in different you know, subgenres, whether it's like this is like a punk track, or this is like the really thrashy track, or this is like a blend of both. And I feel like bands that succeed are able to kind of just cater a little bit to different audiences versus like we're only doing this style. So the track Amber, when I heard that for the first time, just the beginning on how like it's one guitar riff and then a totally different guitar riff that's like that I straight up like has messed things up in my mind where it's like that possibility where it's like it doesn't need to be the same thing, it doesn't need to be a ring out chord. So to have that like that creativity, like that really influenced me when I started to actually write my own music and play in my own bands. So like, has that always been your style, or like were there little seeds that were planted for you when you were doing that?
I cannot take credit for either of those parts.
Oh, okay.
That's Jesse wrote the lead part, which is what opens the song.
Right.
And he wrote the riff after it too, was written, I'm pretty sure, with Sam Trapkin from TUI.
Oh, interesting.
Before I was even in the band. But he had those two parts. He had the beginning idea of Amber, but that was the first song we pieced together once I came.
Got you.
But
okay.
I'm pretty sure Sam and him made that happen. I don't know who controlled like, oh, we'll put this over top of this or whatever. Maybe that was all Jesse and the riffs were completely separate. But I have friends who make fun of me for that part. Like we go to play it live and they just look at me and they go like, this makes no sense. Like, I don't understand how this works. Like
totally
from like songwriting perspective, everyone just goes like, that's a terrible idea that worked.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, totally. On paper, it doesn't make sense, but like in the execution, since we're talking about that song, I know you guys have talked multiple times, you know, and I don't think it's a secret for a true Stig fan that you guys don't like the fact that you have the bridge of Amber as long as it is, and you're like just like does that thought process like fluctuate? Like you listen back, because it's always that thing where you like hate a song and then you listen back, you're like, oh, this is actually okay, or is it like everyone in the band is hard, like no, we should have shortened it? Like where's your head at with it right now?
Oh, it should be shorter. It was because the songs weren't played live. Like we wrote them in a room, and like I don't know if we probably talk about it in like the Stig podcast or something, but straight up, a friend of mine who's also Canadian, his name's Woody. He's like from Windsor, and he was working out in California, and he came into the house when we were working on Amber, and he heard that part, and he was like, oh, this part's sick. It should happen again. And we were just fired up and just like, yeah, you're right. And then just fucking made it happen twice. And then when we started playing it live, we went, oh, no one wants this to happen twice. The whole audience just wants it to hurry up and get through this part.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, it is interesting because like when you guys said that on the podcast, I would go and listen to that song, and I think it does work under the recording when you're just listening to it on its own, but in a live setting, like you said, like maybe it is like, oh, we're here for another, 2 to 4 measures or whatever it is.
Well, it's like we start to call for like a circle pit maybe at that part, and then like halfway through it just winds down and everyone's like, all right, come on, chorus, here we go. Like totally. You can tell it's too long.
Yeah. So maybe going back to, some of the things that happened with the Hope Division, I think that was kind of like, not the breakout record, but that was the record that kind of like, this is the branding and this is the sound that Stig is going to be doing moving forward. And like, I feel like that record really was like, it was that, and then Diamond, and then everything else after like had that like stronger set. And I know that you guys have talked about like pretty openly about like, the trials and the different things in the band, and maybe you coming in post some of those things, but like during all of that and how frustrating that would be for a band when you're trying to work on a record and maybe things aren't going according to plan. How did you guys like push through that? Like, was it like you guys had to confide in one another, or is it just like in your mindset of like, oh, like being problem solving, or how were you essentially just like, instead of throwing in the towel and calling it quits off of a something not going your way? Like, where's your mind go with that?
I don't know. I've always just believed in the band, even from like when I first met Jesse. Comes from the Heart comes out or whatever. And when we take them on tour, I think that they just received records or something like that, and I had gotten one. And then I went in my bunk and I read all the lyrics, and then I just went and found them. Like I didn't even care. Like I thought the music was cool. I liked Stick to Your Guns, but once I like really dove into his lyrics, I just went and found it at the venue, and I was like, we have to talk.
Mhm.
Like, let's just talk. Like, I like how his brain worked, everything about it. I was like, you're from my era, even though you're so much younger than you. Like, you don't even realize, like, if he was from 1994, he would have been like, I feel like he would have been like a legendary 90s vocalist.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Totally.
Like, I just feel like he has that thing, which, I mean, he inspires me with the shit he says. And sometimes even when he's speaking to the crowd, when we're playing, I get like goosebumps. Like, everything about it, it was like, I don't care if there's 50 kids here. I don't care if there's 5,000 kids. I'm just excited to be in this,
Yeah. Yeah. And that's really interesting because like you were saying, if Jesse was of your generation, like theoretically, like, he would be that voice. But I do think like, probably Jesse and I are like close in the same age. He's probably a hair older than me, but like I think he was the voice of my generation per se. Because I think like like at the time when I was listening to like metalcore and lots of stuff off Rise Records and all those, like Stick to Your Guns was like one of my only hardcore outlets, and like to hear all like the political samples that you guys would put on Hope Division and on Diamond, like that opened my mind to like, oh, like what's the connection between the music and the message and all the lyrics that Jesse was saying. So I thought it was if not in that generation, it was like so apparent, like you said, through his lyrics that he would have some influence and you believed in it.
Yeah, and he straight up too, it was like, for me personally, it was at a time where I feel like coming from 90s hardcore, it was very I would say like very like socially conscious and like politically charged or whatever. And then like the 2000s happened, right? And everybody just got big, like, and even the bands that people won't consider hardcore bands that were at one point playing like hardcore shows, it's like all of a sudden there's bands like Poison the Well is huge and Unearthed is huge and like Hatebreed's massive. Like it's just like everything is getting like so large. And I personally was struggling with like Walls of Jericho was doing better and everything, but it seemed like you just saw the larger the bands got.
Oh, froze with Chris.
I don't even know what happened. All of a sudden, my whole house went black for 1 second.
No, that's totally fine. I've had people like their laptops have died in the middle of the episode, so it's very easy to splice in where we're going. But you were talking about how all these bands were just getting so huge, and I think you were phrasing on Hatebreed being as massive as they are.
Oh yeah, like there was just, I would feel like the bands that were connected to the hardcore scene were getting larger than ever, like all the Trustkill bands, all the Fair bands. I mean, Hatebreed was on Universal and stuff like that. And then I was just struggling with, all of a sudden, it seemed like even Walls of Jericho, like we were almost like, it's like you just heard less talking at shows, It was more of just like, it's a show now versus a, like, I don't know, like a community, I guess.
Got you. Okay.
So I was struggling with like that kind of stuff, like just internally going like, oh, what am I doing? Like, like not trying to just like not feel like I'm a sellout or something, but like still just maintain. Like I've always felt like your band can get larger, but you could still just bring along everything that you did from a VFW all,
Totally.
So
yeah.
I don't know.
So
I forget what started this whole thing.
No, that's fine. Just off of that though, like joining Stick to Your Guns, did you feel like, because I think anyone who has any entrepreneurial traits to them, like they can be obsessed with like building something and then like starting at ground zero again and building the next thing. So, if Walls of Jericho is up here and you're like, oh, like, maybe, the band kind of not being able to tour because of certain members, like that's one thing. But was there a thought in your head where you were like, oh, like Stick to Your Guns is down here, so maybe I can like build this thing up? Is that where your mind went, or am I kind of off base there?
No, I'm not like business guy.
Okay.
Like, like that's not I always try to like there's other people who have that skill set that I for sure benefit from having them like within the camp of Stick to Your Guns or the camp of Walter, I just like to focus on music I believe in and saying things I believe in,
So I'm going to use this as a great segue to my question because, so again, like I said, been a big Stig fan since day one and very big influential hardcore band. And I think a lot of people, whenever you guys would come up in conversation, they're like, I've heard a comment that has just like not annoyed me, but it has confused me.
These are the best. I'm excited.
No. Yeah, and these are my words, so don't get it twisted. So
I will not be offended one bit.
Okay, I think people have said like Stick to Your Guns is at a level where they aren't a hardcore band anymore. And maybe to do a little bit more of a very recent example, like with how huge Turnstile is right now and playing all these massive shows, people are like, well, Turnstile isn't a hardcore band anymore because they're like, playing with fucking Post Malone and like, or shit like that. And it's like if you just listen to the music and watch that band live, like the signs point to a hardcore band. So I'm curious on how you take that and, as Stick to Your Guns, in my opinion, is still a hardcore band, despite if you guys have songs that are done acoustically or have singing. Like, I feel like getting lost in some of those like very minute details and being like, it's gotta be fucking raw. It's like, you can still do like, I think it's within the production and the why behind it versus like, oh, this song is over 3 minutes. It's not hardcore or yeah.
No, I agree. I agree with all that. And like, I'm stoked for Turnstile. Like, I think it's rad. They did the last record they did, Time and Space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like that one came out and I went, this one's not for me.
Oh, okay.
Like I was just like not into it. Like I love Nonstop Feeling. Time and Space came out and I listened to it and I was just like, I don't know. But I feel like with the new one, I understood Time and Space was the
primer for that.
Yeah. And It was just like, it was almost like they were figuring themselves out for what the new one is. Glow On? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, you got it.
Okay. Yeah. So it's like, I respect hardcore getting like weird and pushing boundaries. Like, I think it's cool, personally. Yeah. But at the same time, I also love some generic shit too. Yeah. So there's like generic bands I want to stay generic sometimes. And then there's some bands I want to see where they can expand the boundary of what hardcore is.
Yeah. Like, I think if you're playing at a local level, like you can be, your band can be like your version of Strife or your version of Mindset or your version of Terror or whatever it is, or your version of Knocked Loose, even a more timely example. But I think when you're at that level, like I think, people will take notice if you're doing things just a little bit different. But I think as you get bigger, it's almost like you need to expand that even more and be able to play in different areas. And, I think that there is always going to be bands that can play to that. But I think the bands that are really on the rise now are able to like cater and offer something new to the table because, there's a million Strife bands, including Strife, just using them as an example. Have you played with any bands that have done a Stick to Your Guns cover at a show that you're playing with them?
No, but I have, which I didn't write the song, so it's a different feeling for me probably. But I have gone to a local show one time, and then really young kids get up and go like, all right, we're going to cover a song from one of our favorite bands. This is more or whatever. And then every old guy that I hang out with in the back are like just punching me and laughing, and they're like, you got to go up and say move. Yeah. And I'm like, no, it's not happening.
Yeah.
So
that's that.
I've seen that kind of shit.
Yeah. I've always, it's wild to see when bands will cover, the Trapped Under Ices or the Turnstiles, but they're in like very like just places all over the world. Like just like I'll see a reshare from a local band in like Indonesia, like covering, Knocked Loose or like, Tsunami or whoever it is. So I think that's always really funny, but I think it's a little, maybe there's an unsaid rule of like, maybe you shouldn't do that if you're playing with said band.
Oh yeah, for sure. If it also feels weird, I used to play in a band. My first hardcore band was a band called Counterfeit.
Okay.
This was like in the 90s. And do you know the band One for One from New Jersey?
Yes.
Okay.
Epic.
One for One came here to play a show. At the time, we didn't know that they covered No Spiritual Surrender.
Oh.
And we also covered No Spiritual Surrender. And we played it right before them.
Oh, shit.
And then they were playing their set and they were reading their set and they were just like, well, this is the part where we normally play No Spiritual Surrender, but someone already played it, so we're not going to play it. So, I was just like, what a bum out.
I have heard that before with, two bands on a bill are both covering like Set It Off by Madball, and then it's like neither one knows about it, and then it's like, yeah, like then it's like a proper A-B comparison, but they were like, no, we're not even going to go down that road. I love that. So Chris, I have a reoccurring question that I always ask when I land a bigger guest here on the show, because I really think it's fun to kind of put, bands that have a large catalog of music a little not under the gun, but just like I kind of want to get to it because I've asked this when I've had like Stu from Comeback Kid on, been a big fan of that band. When I had, I think, Brendan from Counterparts as well. So in your opinion, and this could change, and this isn't saying these songs are bad or these are the best songs. I'm curious on what your thoughts are. What is the most overrated Stick to Your Gun song, and what is the most underrated Stick to Your Gun song?
Oh shit, that's a good question. Overrated Stick to Your Gun song. This is more. I have like a million, but I'm not the type of person, like there's people who are like, oh, I don't want to play this crap or whatever, like in any band, like Earth Crisis probably hates playing Firestorm.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'll play any song that the room's gonna have that energy.
Totally.
Yeah. I know it's like where I'm at in life. That's like just an easy song to play. And it's like,
totally.
Like we don't practice that song, but
but it's in the set list. It's like, we don't need to practice this one.
Yeah. We rarely go like when we're having a rehearsal, go like, all right, let's play This Is More. That never happens.
That's so funny.
I love playing it when especially playing it in Orange County is like so sick.
Totally.
So that's overrated for sure.
Okay.
Underrated song. I don't know, man. I'm trying to think of a song that I love that nobody likes.
and that could be one that you're like, maybe when you guys are trying to piece together a set list for a tour or a festival, like, you try to push the most and everyone's like, well, we're not going to get the response that we would for like a This Is More or whatever.
This is underrated only, I would say, in North America.
Okay.
From True View. Oh, no, I'm changing it. The entire EP.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
When I listen to the EP, I go like, oh, we wrote some great songs. And when we play them for the most part, people just kind of go, eh.
That's so weird.
I'm like, yeah, I listen to that EP.
And are you saying that's globally everyone's or just within North America?
Kind of like, I feel like it just didn't catch on like I thought. I don't know if it's like because it was released as an EP or whatever, but I feel like I can't use that excuse after Turnstile released their EP. Like they put out an EP and everyone went, oh, holy shit. We put out an EP like years ago and then everyone was just like, this is kind of cool. And then when we played the songs live, they just kind of go, eh. So yeah, that whole entire EP. I love all the songs on it.
Yeah, the songs are great, but that's funny that you say that. But going back to what you're saying as far as like, guitar wise, maybe it doesn't do anything for you. Like when I had Stu from Comeback Kid, I asked him, he's like, yeah, I'm like, I'd be fine with not playing Partners in Crime ever again. Because it's just kind of like I'm just kind of strumming along. But like that song is not for the guitar parts, it's for the vocals and like the gang vocals and those aspects. So, I think the tolerance is a little higher if like it is a song that everyone goes crazy for and will pile up and we'll give you that energy to be like, okay, I have to just burn through this like minute and a half little thing and then we can get on to the other cool shit.
Even when we still play This Is More, sometimes it's like we just give instruments away. It always turns into like a shit show and fun. It's never like It's because no one takes it serious in the band. It's just like, oh, this is the part where we're gonna do. Well,
clearly you guys don't practice it. You're like, well, even if we fuck it up, it's just that song.
Most of the time, and no one's gonna know if you fuck it up because everyone's falling into you anyway. So it's like we just go like, oh, we're doing this thing. Here you go. Take my guitar, whatever.
Based off that song, I know you guys like back in the day, and there's been some like reprints, but you guys had like just the giant Move like hoodies and shirts and stuff. I think I saw like a release or a graphic that had like literally every color of the rainbow, and it was just like everywhere. So,
oh yeah, we did like a build your own Move hoodie, basically.
Yeah, it was like a Build-A-Bear, but just for that specific T-shirt.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, is that like still like you guys will always get messages like you got to reprint this, or is it just like has it almost become a meme of itself?
Everyone wants the Move hoodie. Doesn't matter how old it is. Everyone wants the diamond logo. That's what everyone wants. No matter. We could probably put up a build your own diamond thing, like pick colors and stuff, and it would probably do well.
Yeah, there needs to be
which is cool.
A Build-A-Bear that gets bought out by Pure Noise, and it's just build your own Stick to Your Guns merch.
Which I mean, I'm grateful that there's anyone cares. So it's cool that we have 2 merch items that people never want to go away.
So I saw in your bio that you like chips.
Chips? I do not like chips. I used to have a cat named Chips.
Oh, okay. I was like, I should ask Chris why he likes chips because it says chips in his bio.
Yeah, I had a cat named Chips, but not anymore. And I just haven't updated that bio.
That's so what's your take on ketchup chips? Like we won't spend 10 minutes talking about chips, but because you're Canadian and we have a fair amount of American listeners, and I'm sure some of them just hearing ketchup chips for the first time, they're like, what the fuck is that?
My wife loves chips. She's like a chips person. So is my daughter. I don't really care for chips, but I will eat a ketchup chip. I'm the type of person who can literally eat one chip and go like, that's enough for me.
Oh, You're like the one chip challenge, but just for regular chips.
If there was like a one chip challenge of any chip and it was a contest or something, I'm winning that. No problem.
Lay's or any chip brand should literally like just to sell bags of chips. That's literally just a bag with one chip and it's that flavor, and then just hook you up with it.
Yeah. Like I just don't care for chips. I'm more of like a dark chocolate baked good type snacker.
I got you. You got like the sweet versus the savory kind of palate.
Well, not even sweet. Like I don't like milk chocolate. Yeah. I mean, I'll eat it. I can't say I don't like it, but like I just prefer those kind of things. If it's going to be sweet, I want it to be like a brownie or pie versus like I'm not going to eat a Snickers. Really.
No, that's fair. Well, RIP to chips. Epic cat name for sure. So as far as the time of recording this episode, it seems like Stick to Your Guns has some new stuff in the works. I just when I was like prepping for this podcast, I went to the Stig Instagram, and then I'm like, oh, everything is gone. Everything's been archived to kind of do the whole like, hey, we have something new coming. So I was like, oh, well, anything.
Get that whole thing. Like I understand bands do it and stuff, but I don't care about like it seems weird to me when I go and then it's like, where'd everything go?
Yeah, totally. I'm curious because I've been so involved with marketing and social media, if bands are just archiving everything or if they're just straight up deleting it.
I don't know what we do because I rarely go onto our Instagram.
Yeah.
So.
I'm curious of the metrics because I think it's a little strange too, because I like being able to like scroll all the way down and like see, back when people were like posting stuff on Instagram, like with, the built-in filters that they have, and that was the thing to do. But regardless, so you guys have, I'm assuming, a new record that you guys have been kind of working through since, the last year and change. Like I said at the top of the episode, I'm sure there's lots of things that you can't say, but maybe you can just like, for the fans who are going to be listening to this and, seeing, what to expect from Set the World Ablaze. Assuming that's the title, but you could throw me off completely.
Don't assume anything. I would say that.
Okay.
And then
So
I don't know what I can. When's this come out?
I would say, when's the date of that dropping? The 27th?
No, I think it's this weekend. Maybe. I don't remember, man.
Well,
I actually think it's Friday, but I could be wrong.
Well, hang on one sec. We're just gonna do a little bit of research before we keep moving on.
Are you gonna go to the blank stick to your guns page with one little thing?
So it says the 23rd, which is a Thursday.
Right. Oh, it's Thursday? Yeah, it's Thursday.
But you said don't assume anything, so it could
assume something's coming on that date.
Okay. So
whatever you're assuming might not be the correct thing.
Okay. Well, if you want, we can just drop this on the 24th, the day after. Or if you want to push it back a little bit later, that's up to you.
I just don't know what I should say. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the only thing is I don't want to blow something that's lined up.
Well, no, that's you say whatever you're comfortable, and then we can talk afterwards of like, oh, we actually have to push that back a couple months or whatever it is.
Yeah, I don't know. I would say something's coming on Thursday.
Okay.
That's what I can say.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'll tell you this though. We finished an entire record before lockdown.
Okay.
Interesting. And have been sitting on it. It literally got mixed, and we were like, not arguing, but like debating over like how to release a record and what to do and touring, and everything was up in the air. I wanted to release the whole thing as singles like rappers do. Like at some point I was just like, dude, we're not going on tour, man. Just like, let's just start popping them out like every like couple months.
Yeah.
Like I lost that vote.
I lost that vote.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
Well, the record is coming eventually.
Yeah. And I think, when I really started to dive in deep with this podcast and, people dropped really crucial records for themselves in the midst of 2020, and they only have been able to start like playing those songs live in the last few months here. That's been cool to see, but I think it is also that thing where now it's like, now that touring is starting to be, like the faucet is starting to open and bands are going on tour and planning things in Europe and around the world. It's almost like daunting to be like, okay, like how many bands have something that's been sitting in the chamber that's like, they're just like finger on the trigger as far as like when to release it. Cause
yeah, I mean, that's what we were debating. We were like, there's so many bands that are going to be waiting for like, we're going to put this out as soon as touring happens.
Right.
And it's like, are you be a part of that group, or are you going to be part of the group that like, we're just going to put it out anyway and then not do anything. And then when touring happens, we're going to start touring on it. And then everybody's touring on something new. So it's like, there's no right or wrong answer. You're not going to know till like 3 years from now what the move was.
Right. So like, as an example, even just yesterday, I'm just trying to make sure that I can pull this up so I can hit on everything. So like, these are varying degrees of artists, but like just yesterday, These Streets, band from California, dropped an EP. Momentum, a band from California, dropped a badass single. Comeback Kid dropped a single, and Spirit Box dropped a full record. So it's almost overwhelming the amount of new music. Like I love it. I love being able to hear all this new shit and being able to chew on it. But as a band, especially when you're at that level that you guys are at, you're like, that's essentially your business. So you're trying to navigate okay, we might need to compete with people, but are we gonna maybe compete with to think about even going a year prior and seeing Drain and Rotting Out drop records, they're in the same pocket, kind of close music wise, but dropping records on the same day. I looked at Drain as this up and coming band. I'm like, that really sucks for them. To go up against a band like Rotting Out, and then it was totally flipped. I feel like the Drain record soared largely above what the Rotting Out was, but maybe that's just my personal take. But it's crazy.
For me, it's like, I don't know if it's just what I have going on in life. I'm not trying to be like, I'm the world's busiest guy, but having a daughter and trying to also work on music and whatever stuff is going on in my world, when 7 bands are like, all right, this is all out in one day, I miss a lot of that. Totally. I literally just go I don't have time to sit down and digest 7 full records. I mostly listen to them when I'm in my car or whatever. So it's like, it's overwhelming for me. So I feel like someone who's younger or whatever, who has the time to do that sort of thing, they benefit from that situation. Where for me, I'm just like, oh man, I'm missing out on so much shit. There'll be like a record that came out probably last week that I'll get into in like 2 years.
Yeah.
Someone will be like, you haven't heard this?
I know, totally.
That's going to end up happening to me. And then it sucks for that band, because if more people got into it from jump, then it's more beneficial for the band.
Yeah. What has been maybe the, something on your radar recently, not depending on when it was released, but something that you're currently vibing with?
The new Turnstile. The new Turnstile is the coolest, like one of the coolest things I've heard in a while. It's like, it's the EP, especially when the EP came out, I listened to it, and it, I know people probably don't want this association with their hardcore or whatever, but I heard it and I was like, this sounds like a pool party. Like, and like at the time I was like, we have a pool. So I was like swimming with my daughter and we put on Turnstile, and like, it just fit perfect for like summer to me.
Totally. You've brought up your daughter a couple of times, and I think, I've had a couple guys on the podcast that are, single dads, married, doesn't really matter, but like, talking a little bit about how the things that they learned in hardcore and how they've been applying that either to their day-to-day job, their family life. So, what does that mean for you when it comes to like, being a dad, but like having this like rock star background and all those things?
I wouldn't say rock star ever, but I don't know. I mean, for me, it's like I've always wanted to play music. I never had a goal of being a rock star. Like I just wanted to play shows. Like in the beginning, I just wanted to play local shows with Cold as Life and Earth Mover, and that's all I needed for success. That was success to me, and everything else has just been like, what's the next move? And it's just been piling up, and I've quit every job I've ever had to be able to do this. So for her, I just always try to let her know, like, as long as you're doing something you love, it's like success is really what your version of success is. It's not being a gazillionaire, like being in a huge house with fancy cars. It could be just doing something you love, and sometimes doing that as a side thing to a regular career that you have. And if you can make it into a job, then that's like winning the lottery.
Yeah. That's really, really cool. Cause it's that thing where me and my wife don't want to have kids. And even if we did, it's like, such a hard time of like, not a hard time. I think any raising a kid in any environment is challenging, but I think just like with how backwards some things are with like how kids understanding of like how they have to have things figured out by like 22 or by the like, seeing people their age, but they're like millionaires because they got famous on TikTok or whatever it is. So I think it's super crucial, like you were saying, to be like, hey, you can be successful, but like finding out your version of that is really, really key. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I think because like you could be super successful. I know people who are probably rich who are miserable,
Totally.
It's like, is that success? No. I know people who are just happy and don't have a lot, and to me, that's way more successful.
Absolutely.
I see this person and they just radiate this energy that goes like, this guy's stoked. I want to be around him, versus like, oh, I don't want to be around that rich guy. He's an asshole.
And going back to like one of the early things that we said on the call, not like you were in this toxic bubble, but like as soon as you're introduced to someone that has that positive energy and that like those good vibes and is like genuine, like people have, commented on this podcast of like this Spencer guy, I just want to listen to him because he's smiling all the time or whatever it is.
You got a great vibe. We've never met in person. You got a great vibe.
Yeah. I appreciate that, man. And yeah, like anyone who has met me in person, like I carry myself to that same degree. Like the way that I do this podcast is the same that I would film a show. It's like kind of whatever happens, it makes the take, and I'm totally okay with like showcasing who I am in the most authentic way possible versus trying to cut it up and try to like showcase myself in a better light. Like, I would rather just show up as me and like do this better to just like get better at the craft. And like you said, like the ideas of success is not like this Joe Rogan like weird mystery thing. It's like just being able to have cool conversations with anyone about hardcore is like, you know, that to me is like knowing that I'm doing something right with this show.
It's awesome.
Love that. Since we're talking podcasts, where's the Stick to Your Guns one? Because it just seems like it just halted. And I was like,
it was hot for a minute and then just fizzled out. I think there's another one coming, but it was like, honestly, everyone just started doing stuff. Like at first, like we started it before lockdown.
Right.
So we were together and able to do stuff. And then we live all over the place. Like our bass player lives in Norway. Jesse and Josh live in California. George, our drummer, lives in Colorado. And I live in Windsor. Yeah. So it's like getting everyone together to like talk is difficult, you know? People start working jobs and just doing different stuff. So it's like hard to like get together and go like, what are we going to talk about now?
Right.
You know?
Totally. I've known you as someone when you're playing guitar and you have it very down pat to two-step while playing guitar. Did you see someone do that and you're like, I have to figure out a way to replicate that? Or you're like, I need to just be able to mosh while I'm playing in my own band? Like, how did that begin?
Both things for sure. I just loved pitting when I was a kid, and Sick of It All was one of my favorite bands. And though both those dudes, Craig and Pete, both of them used to just like two-step all over the stage while they play. And I just thought it looked cool. So as like a 15-year-old kid, I was like, oh, I could do this. I used to just sit and play riffs and just two-step all the time. So now it's like normal for me to do.
I think it's like I've been able to find a little bit of a rhythm when we're in like we're just the guitar is like ringing out, but you've been able to like play full chords and all that like while you're just moving around.
I mean, that's also like from just touring constantly. Like I probably fucked up a whole bunch like doing it, and then slowly it's just another skill I've developed.
Got you. Yeah, that's really interesting. And it's just something that I notice with any band is like the ability to, you know, bring it on the songs, but being able to bring it in a live setting without it compromising at the same time. So yeah. Well, Chris, based off my doggos just in the background, just going nuts and bananas, and I want to be sensitive to your time as well. We can start to wrap up the show here. This has been a really great chat. I think we've hit on a lot of great things. All of your shit and Stig's, links and all that will be in the description of the video and in the show notes. But if there's anything you want to end on before we let you go, the floor is yours.
Oh man, I wish I would have been more prepared. I don't know. I appreciate you having me do this. It was cool that you hit me up and asked me. And I think what you're doing and like interviewing everybody is like super cool to just document people talking about their experiences from all levels, you know? Mm-hmm. So I appreciate you.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you, Chris. I hope that we can link up and, you know, share some vibes in person as well as, you know, through the Zoom call here. But yeah, thanks for coming on. I hope that we get to do some more Stig podcasts in the near future.
Yeah, well, hopefully this wasn't just a boring conversation with your dad.
Not at all. Not at all.